This is Geek Gab with your host, Dornall, and me, Daddy Warpig. We are back, Geek Gab, for Monday, July 7th, 2025. We have today in our studio the only living science fiction grandmaster, John C. Wright, who's going to be talking about his ongoing Kickstarter that is reaching its crescendo even as we speak. But before we do that, we want to talk about any news, and I'm going to give a tiny pocket review of the entire Final Destination series, which I've watched in the last 3 days. So, Dornall, do you have any news for us?
Yo, I've got no news. In schlocky entertainment, we've the last final season of Squid Game is on Netflix. So if you're still foolishly subscribed to that service, you can check that out. It's just as gory as the previous installments, so you can enjoy that horror there. Yeah.
Interrupt you. My apologies.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say there was a big bloodbath over at Microsoft Gaming Studios, their Xbox arm. They're shutting down studios left and right and letting developers go.
Oh man, that had slipped my mind. It's true. Microsoft Gaming has done really bad. They're axing a bunch of people. It's awful. This is off the heels of, and this isn't just gaming news, off the heels of earlier this year, they did also lay off developers outside of that area. And it was a lot of tenured or experienced workers were let go. A lot of people close to retirement or in a very senior position. They're not the only ones that were let go. So Microsoft is cutting house and cleaning costs. No, the other way around. Cleaning house and cutting costs. It's modern corporate life, guys. But the gaming story is big. You were an Xbox gamer for a long time, weren't you?
Still am. But it turns out that it looks. Someone has said that Xbox is turning off its hardware division, so they're not going to be making Xboxes anymore. So I don't know what I'm going to be doing anymore. All my gaming was on Xbox console. I don't do gaming on PC because I don't own one, and I don't do gaming on my Mac because that's my production machine. I've got multiple programs, and I've got a browser with 700 tabs open on it. That's not a joke.
Good. So
I don't have time to shut everything down to launch a game and then relaunch everything. Even though I've got a great computer that's really fast, it's just not going to run like that. There was some, a tempest in a teacup that was apparently pretty big. Critical Role launched a D&D killer called Daggerheart that is so far outside my sphere of gaming knowledge that I never heard of it. And they changed their third-party licensing terms, and a bunch of people got upset. And then somebody made a video about it, and other people got upset about the video. And it's just been this big, huge controversy that happened way outside any of the people I know. I did not see anything on Twitter about it. And so I just have to conclude it's happening in and among people that game in a completely different manner for completely different reasons than I do.
Yeah, I'd only heard about it in passing. Whoever Whoever their audience is, it ain't it. I ain't it.
So I don't know what's going on. Fourth edition allowed Pathfinder to nudge ahead of it in Pathfinder 1, to nudge ahead of it in terms of sales for a little while. And they turned around and made 5th edition in 2014. And now this new edition that they're not calling a new edition, they're saying it's something else. But whatever it is, the look and feel and what they're doing with it is not Dungeons and Dragons. It's more of a cozy fantasy thing, which is not what Dungeons Dragons is supposed to be. What they're doing with it seems to me, and I don't think that Critical Role, no matter how large their audience is, I don't think that they're really in a place to make a D&D killer. I don't know who may come out and make a game that edges out Dungeons and Dragons for a while. But I don't think it's going to be Daggerheart. And the other contenders that came out recently were Shadow Dark. Huge Kickstarter. I don't think it's going to be them. And there was another one mentioned in the video that I had heard of, but I can't remember the name of it. But it was another, another D&D-esque clone in the retro clone mold.
Yeah, Shadow Dark and Axe. Someone in the chat mentioned McCrease. Hey, welcome to the chat. Shadow Dark and Axe hit that retro clone market, right? That's not the same market as Critical Role. It's actually not the same market as D&D. I tend to agree with Bradford Walker. It's just like you were saying, Warpig. No one can replace D&D. You're not going to kill D&D. That space is firmly entrenched in the consciousness of our culture. Role playing is Dungeons and Dragons, but there's these little niches. Shadow Dark did really, really well. Axe is amazing at what it does. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I think that if D&D continues on this path, because it's so antithetical to what D&D is supposed to be, it's so antithetical to the core audience of D&D. I think that much like comics is dying, much like video game industry is dying, much like traditional publishing is having a rough time, I think you could see a game come out that supplants D&D, because it's being poisoned. This isn't an edition war. This isn't a matter of people getting angry that third edition did all that crazy multi-classing stuff or added skills as a core feature or whatever, and that fourth edition tried to be an MMO. This is a poisoning of the culture of what D&D itself is supposed to be.
Gentlemen, would I be premature if I quoted the famous saying, if you get woke, you go broke, or is there some other reason why the D&D is not playing to their audience? I'm not familiar with the issue, so I'm actually asking a serious question. Is that what they're doing? Are they just offending their audience?
They are offending vast swaths of their audience because they are taking the focus away from action and adventure and exploration and focusing it on they have whole settings now that are focused on prom at a college and running a tea shop or coffee shop in a what was it, a bunch of tents set up with
Caravanserai.
in them.
A caravanserai is the word you're looking for.
And so they're just, what the game they're making is not Dungeons and Dragons. It's not about adventure. It's not about excitement. It's not about combat. It's not about exploring. It's not about, you know, dungeon diving or exploring the wilderness or uncovering things. It's just in its spirit, in its soul. It's not D&D. And so you want to look at that, and it does not appeal to the audience of D&D, and it does not appeal to the audience of role players.
It's very interesting that you gentlemen asked me to appear on this broadcast when discussing this issue, because it's exactly parallel with what happened to me and why I wrote this book I'm trying to haul. I mean, I'll talk about that when it's my turn to talk. If you guys want to keep on talking about the news, go right ahead. I'm just saying it's a pattern that's not, it's not just D&D these days. It's a lot of things that happen this way, of guys who just don't like their audience and they don't want to appeal to them. Yeah.
It's exactly what happened with Star Wars. Those last 3 Star Wars movies were not made for Star Wars's audience. The Witcher series was not made for people who like The Witcher. And it just keeps going like that. And it is a horrendous problem. And let me dive into let me dive into the Final Destination. I watched all 6 Final Destination movies. And if you've seen one, you generally know what they're about. There's a big accident at the beginning of the movie. Someone has a vision. Everybody or some people escape the big accident. And because they have escaped the big accident, everybody else who doesn't go with them to get off the plane or exit the bus or whatever dies in this plane crash or whatever. And then the people themselves find that death is stalking them. And death here is an impersonal force in the universe. Death is stalking them to try and put the world right, to try and kill off the people that were not supposed to escape this this disaster. And most importantly, it does it in the order that they were supposed to die during the disaster itself. And so it arranges for Rube Goldberg machines of random items in the environment to cause, to bring about someone's death. So these intricate little interplays of little items that just randomly happen to start rolling into place, that one of them might be an accident, but when you see like 6 or 7 of them all moving into place, especially when the movie's, focusing the camera on all of them, it's clear this is death arranging circumstances and these outrageously crazy things to bring about, expiring some of these people. The problem with the movie is there wasn't enough set up in the first movie as a mythos or a moral grounding to carry this series, to carry a series of movies. There was enough to make one good horror movie, but there wasn't enough to sustain 6 movies. So every movie after it has had to mangle this, the rules of the universe. And every movie after the first has become essentially a nihilistic outing where it seems as if people or some people have escaped death, but then in a sudden stinger at the end of the movie, like in other horror movies, it would be, oh no, the monster has actually come back, even though it seems you killed him. In these movies, it's, oh no, the people are suddenly killed, even though they seem to have escaped death, which renders the whole movie kind of depressing. And I won't lie, watching all 6 of these movies in a really short period of time is actually depressing. You start rooting for.
It's a stupid, it's a stupid jump scare at the end, like, oh, they can't really escape their fate, and you go,
Right.
oh, all right, I guess.
The
shock value works, and then you're sort of left empty.
Yeah.
And speaking as a writer, to pull that off, you need to have the people be cursed for some good reason. The people have to be guilty of something they thought they were escaping, not just random teenagers who just happen to, they're dying because it's their time.
Yeah.
Then there's no escape. Then there's no tension. There's no plot. There's no plot tension.
And what sets it off, John, is that the initial person, the person who initially survives the catastrophe, gets a vision. And so it's this psychic vision of the future, and they use that knowledge to avoid certain death. But there's no explanation that I recall of where this vision came from or anything like that. So
Nope.
they sort of knowingly cheat death, but it's just sort of handed it to them on a platter, just so that the audience can suffer through.
But do you see how the plot would differ if the vision came because a guy sold his soul to the devil, and the devil actually pretended he was going to tell the guy how to escape death, and it was a cheat? You see the difference between that and this? Because then there's a story. Then there's a punishment for making a deal with the devil. It's not just. If the angel of death is going to kill all the firstborn Egyptians, then what are you going to do? If you don't paint your doorway with blood, you're dead. there's no plot there. There's no, Excuse me. That example is really bad. There's a plot there. It's actually a very interesting plot, but there's no plot if you're just randomly selected for death because your numbers up.
Yeah.
What the movie series needed was an explanation of why the visions come. And
it needed a mythology. It needed you said that word before.
Mythos. Yeah, it needed a mythos.
Right.
And my thought immediately is, okay, this is a nihilistic universe. They're dying for no reason, but something acted to save them. Therefore, there was some, I'm not saying they were saved. You have to make them saved for a higher purpose, but there was some reason that this guy got a vision, some other force counteracting death, some force counteracting death acted to give him a vision. The people who listened to him survived. Everybody who didn't listen to him died. And even later during the movie, he gets, and it's, even more in the later movies, they get clues and continuing visions that they can decipher to help people avoid the deaths that are coming. They get, this one girl takes a bunch of pictures of friends, and then these pictures that happened before leading up to the big accident that kicks the movie off provides clues as to how death is going to try and kill them off after they escape him the first time, and they use those to save their lives. So clearly something oracular or prophetic is acting on their behalf to help them avoid death. There needs to be an explanation for that, and whatever that force is needs to give them a fair chance to escape death. And if they can beat it, then they can escape death, and they shouldn't be killed at the end of the movie. They should have a chance. The one movie that was very clever was the fifth one. I believe it was the fifth one, because the people could see death's machinations, see its little coincidences, and then they could act in the moment against them to avoid them, and then death would have to try something different. So it became a trial of wits between this impersonal force trying to kill them and them using their human ingenuity, their human creativity to get out of the way of this implacable force. And then some of them escaped, some of them made it. And that's a clever idea. That's a good idea. That it isn't just due to the prophecies, but they, as human beings, are using their own awareness, their own creativity, their own gumption, their own courage to avoid the deaths that death is trying to set up. That is something that can sustain a story or a scene, a tense scene, beyond just the, oh, here's all these things happening. Isn't it a cool death? Which is what they're trying to sell the movies on. Here are these cool scenes of coincidences we've set up as filmmakers. Marvel at how clever we as filmmakers are at setting up these deaths for you. So with the mythology, that even if you don't fully explain the forces on their side, there is a force that's on their side that's against death, that gives them a fair chance. And at the end of the movie, if they've managed to outsmart death, to decipher the clues, to figure out when death is coming for them, they've managed to outsmart it by using their own characteristics as people, because that's what stories are about. That's what adventure and excitement is about. Is, we see James Bond thinking his way out of a situation, or Indiana Jones, figuring out how to get out of a situation. That's what an adventure is about. Them thinking their way out of the situation and getting out of the situation. And then at the movie, if they've earned their way to freedom, if they've earned their way to live, then they've successfully taken advantage of the chance, whatever this positive force is. They've successfully taken advantage of that chance, and they win. It's not a nihilistic ending. That would be a great series, not a depressing series.
Quite right, because in any story, I mean, just speaking as a professional author, any story needs to have, if you're telling a tragedy, the tragedy has to happen according to some flaw in the main character. If you're telling a horror story, the events can be random, but true horror comes from something like Frankenstein, where he brings the monster he makes upon himself because of his hubris. He's trying to unlock the secrets of life and death, which no man is meant to know. I've often had the theory that whatever behavior is rewarded by the plot is the behavior that is the moral of the story, whether the author knows it or not. But if you put a person in a situation where no solution is the correct solution, no matter what he does, death is going to win at the end, then the story is nihilistic by definition, because there is no moral. There's no winning behavior. There's nothing you're supposed to do.
So, yeah, that's my review of the Final Destination movies. Is there is almost genius in there if they had taken the ingredients that were there and taken just two more steps in recognizing what they could have done with what they had.
But what was the audience, though? If the audience just wants to see ghoulish deaths, they don't want to see people figuring out how to escape from their fate. You see, nor do they want the moralistic element that I would want to see in it, which is that the fate has to be deserved. Which is why I mentioned a deal with the devil story.
Yeah. So I think there is room for, well, like the Poseidon Adventure, right?
Sure.
There is room for
the Poseidon Adventure is an excellent example of what you're talking about, because all those people use either good or bad strategies to try to escape the disaster.
Right.
I mean, it's basically a problem-solving movie. That's what any disaster movie is. How do you deal with the disaster once it comes upon you?
So it could be like a disaster movie, only instead of dealing with a natural disaster, you're dealing with a supernatural disaster.
But you're right at the very beginning. It's a supernatural disaster, so there's got to be you have to say what the rule is, what the supernatural rules are.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's my review, having watched all 6 Final Destination movies in the last, 3 days. So I am well prepared.
For a very depressing, gloomy time, if you want to see a lot of pointless deaths. Thank you. Then when you're done watching that, watch Squid Game for even more gruesome, pointless deaths.
Gruesome, pointless deaths, for sure.
So we have done our traditional half hour of discussion leading up to letting our guests do their thing. And our guest is John C. Wright. Mr. Wright, would you like to describe how and why? Oh, and this actually ties in with what you're saying. The last movie, Final Destination Bloodlines, which just got out of theaters around here and is being pulled out of theaters, which was available on streaming on Amazon. I rented it. That's how I could watch it today. It fell prey to this same problem that all these other movies are falling prey to and all these other industries are falling prey to. None of the characters acted like real people. The movie was written as if it had been made by writers who learned what people are by watching TV shows and movies, but had never actually met a real person in real life. And they were trying to remake The Ring or other horror movies. They weren't making a Final Destination movie. I don't know if they were trying to do the A24 elevated horror thing, but they just decided to try and jettison their Final Destination audience and make a movie that wasn't even a Final Destination movie, despite having all of the signs of it, and just completely messed it up. And then at the end, or halfway through it, you have a woman in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, just like Jamie Lee Curtis in the recent Halloween trilogy, where her house is all armored up against Michael Myers, only her house is all armored up against death itself. And it's like they just took a bunch of different horror movies that were successful and tried to chop them up and put them together and make them successful. There was little or no originality in it. And it's falling prey to all of these, forgetting what you are, forgetting who you are. And the Final Destination movie stopped being made in 2011, which is where this trend started to happen, which was in 2012 and just been getting worse and worse and worse. And it poisoned and killed Star Wars, which is where the books that you were running a Kickstarter for come in.
Correct. Because a lot of figures in the entertainment industry, both in New York publishing and in Hollywood, at about that same time, a whole generation of young artists decided that the most important thing was not the quality of the art, but the identity of the hiree, or the person being hired. So a lot of people got hired or published based on their political identity or their sexual identity or their racial identity, with no concern for their merit, whether they were writing good or bad. Well, if you don't maximize good quality, you're going to get poor quality. But there's something else involved, because in a lot of these things that we were just discussing, including in Star Wars, it looked to me as if the people who bought the IP, people who bought the intellectual property, actually disliked the audience to which they were trying to appeal. As if they thought their role was a teacher, or better yet, an adversary, who was supposed to either teach the uninformed, ignorant people they were trying to mold or shape with their, I can only call it social engineering skills, or they just actually despised them and wanted to flaunt their dislike of their audience. I honestly can't explain a movie like The Last Jedi in any other fashion. You had a character in The Last Jedi, Luke Skywalker, the one guy who would not give up on Darth Vader when his master said there's no good left in the man, who risked his life and threw down his weapon to stand naked in front of the most evil creatures in the galaxy, daring them to kill him, and there did turn out to be an iota of good left in the creepy old cyborg. Okay, it's a famous scene. But in the Disney version, in the sequel version, he merely tosses his lightsaber over the shoulder when offered when asked to go back to the hero's journey to help the galaxy, and he gives up all hope on everything. He's just a nihilist at that point. So I was so deeply offended by this movie that when it first came out, many a year ago now, I wrote up a joke column of what the movie should have been like, and I pretended I was from a parallel timeline, the better timeline, which had a movie called The Dark Sun's Rising or something like that. Because the wife and I and my adult kids, had spent the hour driving back from the film just talking about what we would have done differently with the same situation. Well, that article got so much benevolent commentary, so much applause, that I said, well, I think as a fan of space opera from my youth up, and as a guy who claims to be the last living grandmaster science fiction, or at least the most egotistical guy who claims that title absurdly, I have to admit that was thrown upon me by my publisher. I did not pick that title for myself. In any case, I said, put up or shut up, John. I said, if you think you can write better with this kind of material, then do so. So I said, I'm going to take Star Wars, but I'm going to make it not Star Wars because I don't have the IP, and I want something that will remind the readers of Star Wars, but not be so close as to be uncreative. So in order to achieve the highest possible Everest peak of creativity, I just stole a bunch of other stuff from a bunch of other sources. So I threw in the Catwoman and the Shadow from Maxwell Grant, and Lee Fawkes, the Phantom, and Percy Brakely from the Scarlet Pimpernel, and I don't know, Space Pirates. I said Star Wars, the movies at least. I don't know about the extended universe, but the movies didn't have enough space pirates for my taste. So I said more space pirates, and I said they have a galaxy long ago and far, far away. So I'm going to have my galaxy be in the future and be the nearest galaxy, Andromeda. So that's what I did. Now the setup, the premise is basically the same. There's an evil empire called the Evil Empire of Evil, or the Greatest Empire, or something like that. It's recently been defeated, and the Commonwealth thinks that the Empire is dead and gone, though you and I know that it's still around, lurking at the corners of in the thin disk fringes of the galaxy beyond the frontier, regathering its strength. Because in my background, as in the original Star Wars, if you kill a Jedi or a Sith, he could come back as a ghost. So you haven't actually killed him if you only kill his body. You have to kill his spirit too. So there are, and I originally intended to have a 4-book series with 4 main characters, but then it got expanded to 12 because I decided each one should have a trilogy of his own. Because I'm a madman and I don't know how to control myself. Excuse me. Because I am completely loyal to the muse and will do whatever my artistic inspiration says in order to service heaven as best I can. So I decided one Dark Lord was not good enough for me. So I decided that I had to have Lord Famine, Lord Pestilence, Lord Death, and Lord War as my four Dark Lords of Planet Apocalypse, or whatever I was going to call it. And I didn't want to go back to traditional publishing. I had a long and a mutually beneficial business relationship with Tor Books in New York City for quite some time. But after the Sad Puppies episode of the 2015-ish, I decided to go my own way. And a lot of the things that the publisher used to do for me, I now have to rely on myself, my wife, or my friends to do. So at the moment, I'm passing the hat and trying to make big, sad puppy eyes at everyone who will come by to throw coins into my hat, because I'm begging for money so that I can buy book covers for the rest of my books, and also form out some other tasks I need done. So what we're doing with the Kickstarter is we're offering books at a cheaper rate than you can get if you actually go and buy them, provided you decide to buy them ahead of time through the fundraiser, through the Kickstarter. And if you really want to give me a lot of money, I'll not only sign a book, but I'll write a short story for you. No, I take it back. Someone already bought that one, did they?
There's one left, I think.
I agreed to write 2 short stories?
Yeah, that we put up to.
Oh my, okay.
Yeah, there's one left.
Okay, so there's still 1 short story left if you want your own personalized John C. Wright short story.
But yeah.
It's very expensive. That's the top notch. That's the most expensive. I'm not going to do that for just any Tom, Dick, or Harry. But if you want to go there and throw in $1 or $5, then what is our lowest? Let me consult my financial advisor.
Yeah,
What's the lowest one?
Kickstarter allows $1. I put it at 5.
$5.
Both are available.
And what's the lowest thing you get thanked?
Well, no, everything that's been earned by reaching a stretch goal. So it includes the Galen's Way, which is the first of the 4th age Starquest books, who were written by someone else.
Yep.
Richard, whose last name I can't pronounce.
I have other authors who have entered into my sandbox and played in my background I made up. Pellinoni.
Yeah, and then that you get a book, a choice of what I have, the list of what you and I have available in ebooks. They get a choice of one. There's a copy of Last Straw and a digital copy of the forthcoming Hero's Journey card game for Starquest. If we get much more money than we currently have made, that we'll get a physical. Everybody will get a physical copy, but right now I don't think we're going to reach that.
And I would like all your listeners to be aware that I still have a son who has to go to college, and so not if we don't actually make our goals, I'm going to go out and kill a puppy. A big, sad-looking puppy. I'm allowed to because I'm named after. I got my start in.
Do you want John Wick? Because that's how you get John Wick.
Oh, I didn't realize there was the wick factor to. Well, how about a goldfish? Because no one feels sorry if you kill a goldfish. I'll wrestle an alligator. I'll eat an alligator. How's that?
Love it.
I won't wrestle the alligator though. I'm too old. But I will eat an alligator.
Upon hearing that, that I went to the Kickstarter here, and I'm showing it on the screen for anybody who's following along on YouTube, so you can see what's going on here. It looks like you've got some covers funded, but as you said, there's a lot more to stretch for. So congrats on funding so far.
I'm very pleased with the generosity of my patrons and my beloved readers for funding what they have so far. But I intend to write 12 of these books. Oh, by the way, just last Friday, I'm going to say last night, even though my wife is going to correct me because it was a day or two ago, I got done with book 8. Oh, yeah. And more than half of book 9 is already pre-written. So I'm leaping ahead very quickly, In fact, I haven't even read it. I haven't even read the last chapter of book 8 to my editor, to whom I am married yet. So. And by the way, I'm not the only one who knows that L. Judge Lamplighter is a great editor. You can get testimony from many other people who have profited by her advice.
We just had one of her biggest fans as a client last week. Brian Niemeyer was on talking about his Kickstarter.
Yep.
He never fails to mention Jadji every time we talk.
Very good, very good. He's a right guy. Now. Here's the other thing I would like to say to my patrons and readers and anyone else who feels pity for me having to eat an alligator. Did I mention the big sad dog eyes? Or if that doesn't work, let me just use a little Vulcan logic here. There are so many things in our society right now that are just garbage, and they should be fun. They should be good. They should be like old-fashioned pulp. Okay, they should be space opera. They should be heroic heroes, villainous villains, villains full of villainy, plot twists, psychic powers, exploding stars. I mean, there should be stuff that you like, not just people who take the things you liked when you were a kid and turn them into junk. Okay? I think we've all had enough of that, and everyone complains about it. At least everyone in my circle complains about it. But please pony up a little money to do something about it. If we get this project rolling, it could be the start of a snowball, of an avalanche, to make space adventure stories great again. It could be part of the make adventure yarns great again would be MEGA, or whatever the acronym would be. Because I like hard science fiction as much as the next guy. I like nuts and bolts science fiction fine. I've written a few of them myself. I like fantasy. I've written some fantasies myself. I like them a lot. But space opera is supposed to be garish and gigantic and over the top. And if you don't blow up a planet in the first 5 minutes of the film, or within the first, it doesn't have to be the first 5 minutes. If you blow up a planet, space opera. So Star Wars, Planet Alderaan, no weapons, destroyed. Spoilers. spoiler warning for a film released in 1979. Okay, it's huge. That's like the Lensman series by Dr. E. Smith. See, oh, I also threw the Gray Lensman into my book. So you're gonna get, if you read my book, you're gonna get Lamont Cranston the Shadow. You're gonna get Percy Brakely. You're gonna get the Catwoman. You're gonna get the Gray Lensman. You're gonna get the Ancient Mariner. You're going to get I have my version. I decided to. I didn't want to copy everyone directly, but I did have people based on people or inspired by people. But my version of Chewbacca is actually Hank McCoy from the X-Men. He's an engineer, and he's smarter than all the humans. Because he's big in furry, and he comes from a long-lived species, and his pet project is breeding humans because he's trying to get them to arrange. He tries to help arrange their marriages. Which is, I mean, he thinks of them as they're his pets. They're a little, weird, but they're nice.
Naturally.
The humans don't necessarily think that's what's really going on, and they kind of tolerate him because he's a flipping genius. So. And
is this guy? No, couldn't be. He's a scientist. He wouldn't do that.
Who's a scientist?
Oh, the genius. He would.
The genius is a technician. He's not an abstract scientist. He's a guy who makes. He's a mad scientist. He makes super weapons. He makes the Sly Fox is my invisible ship. That's my version of the Phantom Cruiser from Space Ghost. So that the now what I did is I said this is the second generation after the Great Adventure. So all my main characters are the children of people who are retired heroes, which I've always thought is a kind of an interesting literary technique because they want to live up to what their parents have done, but the galaxy is free, the Empire is gone, or is it? And they also don't want to upstage what their parents have done. You say, my main characters are the four children of Duke Lone. I made my version of Han Solo into a Duke rather than a smuggler, so that he could chase, arrest, and then marry Jade, the Pirate Queen, the beautiful young queen of pirates, and convince the pirates to fend off against the Empire. But these events I'm mentioning now all happened in the background. So the main character, who's a policeman, is the son of a pirate queen and knows all her sneaky pirate tricks because he was raised by her. But he's also the son of the Duke who overthrew the Empire. My version of Luke Skywalker, I decided that if the guy was going to be a yokel, first he should talk with an outrageous Irish or an outrageous Southern accent or something like that, an Appalachian accent. And second, he should be a slug farmer when he was young, not a sand farmer, because I don't have to film in Tunisia for my alien planet. And third, he should just be he's now the wise old man. You see, in every hero's journey story like this, the guy who's the young kid in the earlier episode turns into the wise old wizard in the later episode. So he's the guy who seeks out I have several main characters. I mentioned the sons of the heroes, but there's two things that I think Disney Star Wars did really badly. They took a female main character and made her a rather attractive actress, but they made her up to be a very unattractive person. Mary Sue, I think was her name, or Ray something or other.
Right.
And Mary Sue was good at everything, struggled for nothing, and could outfight soldiers. So they took this little girl and turned her into a soldier. And I said, okay, I'm sick of seeing, unless the girl is from the planet Amazon, unless she's a space alien. If it's a female Vulcan, I'll give it to you. They're stronger than humans. She can do the nerve pinch, fine. But a Humie? I'm sorry, you can't. You're not going to beat up Henry Cavill. You're not going to beat up a linebacker. And if you have psychic powers, why aren't you doing the things with it that women are supposed to do with psychic powers, like exorcisms, like driving demons away, like astral projection, like seeing into people's dreams, like helping the sick and the poor? The Jedi were supposed to be this spiritual force, but they don't act very spiritual, in my opinion. So I said, okay, I'm going to have a race of Jedi Knights, or a group, an order rather, not a race, an order of Jedi Knights. But I'm going to make them more like Christian Knights. I'm going to make them more like Templars. I picked the name Templars because they're kind of spooky in our history, and maybe they dabbled with the occult, and maybe they didn't, or maybe they were just killed by Philip the Fair for no reason. So my Templar Knights also have a female auxiliary branch, but they're not warriors. They have a demon slaying bow. They have a Japanese looking sort of the Japanese thought you could drive away demons with a bow and arrow, and I thought that was a great idea. So I said, why don't you have instead of a lightsaber, why don't you have a sword that both is spiritual and physical, so it can cut through anything made of matter, but also stab ghosts which are coming back from the dead, something like that. You see where I'm going with this? I also thought the dark side of the Force was not dark enough for my taste, so I made it Azathoth from H.P. Lovecraft. I made it actually Cthulhian. So when you traffic with those creatures to get powers, you're doing something really stupid, but you get a lot of power. So there's that. There's that. In any case, I talked over my own point. Instead of having the girl be the soldier and the stormtrooper defector, which I thought was a great idea for Star Wars. No one else had ever done that. Why not have a stormtrooper defect?
And we were all excited for that. We saw the
trailer. He should have been as kick butt as Samuel L. Jackson. He should have been the man. He should have been equal to Arnie in Predator. Okay,
why wasn't
he a real soldier? He was the Jedi. He should have been the Jedi. So in my version, he's the Jedi. But I said that's not good enough, Stormtrooper Jedi. I said this is the Stormtrooper who comes from, in my story, I call them clone troopers or shock troopers because I'm not really trying to hide what I'm doing. They work for the Inquisition. The Inquisition is the part of the Empire that looks for and hunts down and kills off anyone with psychic powers because they don't want any Templars, they don't want any Jedi in their order, you see. But he's got these powers that he's hiding from his own bosses. You see what the problem is? And one of the plot twists, I don't want to give away any secret surprises, but he's not working for who he thinks he's working for. Because the Empire, in my version of the Empire, I took a page from Nick Cole, who's a guy I rather admire, because he did a very similar thing with a Star Wars, not Star Wars story. In Nick Cole's galaxy, the Empire is completely atheistic and preaches reason, and there's nothing supernatural, there's no psychic powers, there's nothing spiritual. So I said, okay, I'm going to do that. The Empire not only forbids research into psychic phenomenon, and they kill anyone who's got witchcraft powers, or they say they do, they deny it exists at all, you see? So the whole empire is an empire of lies. It's just based on gaslighting everyone. So the main character is a clone, and he's born and raised on the few planets still controlled by the Empire, but he's told as a child that the whole galaxy is still in Imperial hands, and only a few remnants of the rebels exist, and they're about to be destroyed. And they've been about to be destroyed his whole life, you see? And he's told of all these victories of all these legions and all these space fleets that he's never met anyone from. You see where I'm going with this? So when my crazy old wizard finds this guy, because of course the guy actually does have psychic powers and they can sense each other through the dream realm, he's got to find out that everything he learned in his life was a lie. You see? So that's his name.
Things.
His name is he doesn't have a name. He just has a number code, but his name is Flint and Steel. His call sign. The main character girl, I did with what I always do, which is see, I like Superman and Batman and Frodo because they're all orphans, as is Peter Parker. So I just think, okay, and Harry Potter. I think if you have to have a main character, he better be an orphan because otherwise he'll just go to his dad for help. So my main character girl is a princess because you have to have a space princess in space. And she's psychic because you have to have a space witch in space.
Yep.
And her entire planet was destroyed because you have to feel sorry for her in space. And she was raised as a street rat, as a pickpocket, and as a member of as a kid gang under Sam the Lizard in the Tanner's district of a stinking city called Qasor Al Faras. And so she's also a pickpocket and a rogue. And she gets training from the crazy old wizard too. He's running a school because I thought that idea from Rogue or from Hogwarts or from the EU. In the extended universe, there's a Jedi Academy. They didn't put any of these good ideas into the movies. You know?
Yeah, I believe that they explicitly said they were going to not use any of the EU stuff in the movies.
And then they borrowed a few ideas and made them terrible. It's just so sad. I mean, part of my reason for writing this whole thing, this has taken me years, 12 books, and part of my reason for running this Kickstarter and begging with my hat in hand for all my lovely patrons is I felt sorry for Luke Scott, for Mark Hamill. I felt sorry for the guy. Here's an actor who's portrayed one of the most famous, iconic characters in all science fiction. Luke Skywalker is actually more decent than Captain Kirk, because Captain Kirk's a sailor and he kind of sleeps around with, American Indians on the space planet, and he has a son out of wedlock in one movie. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a right guy, but James Bond also. There's things. Not Luke. Luke was noble. He was innocent. He had to learn a hard lesson. He got maimed. His dad was a bad guy. I mean, that was like a Greek tragedy and with a happy ending. So then he's contractually obligated to portray sulky Mope Walker, the mopiest Jedi of all who gave up being a Jedi because of Mopey, because of the sads. I said, are you kidding me? That's not. When Star Wars was supposed to be Buck Rogers, it was supposed to be Flash Gordon, it was supposed to be all the old serials, Spy Smasher, it was supposed to be all these old serials brought to life, And Buck Rogers doesn't turn into a sad old man after he defeats Ming the Merciless. He doesn't. That's not what he goes home like Cincinnatus and lives on his farm with his beautiful wife. He and Dale have 10 kids. That's what's supposed to happen. Not he goes and sulks on a mysterious island drinking blue milk from a big Dr. Seuss beast with oversized udders. I mean, come on. That was so... The movie maker was just insulting the audience. He was just going out of his way to tweak the nose of anyone who likes Star Wars. And they did it over and over again. They did it with DC Comics, did it with their movies. The Marvel Universe did it. The Ghostbusters with their girl Ghostbuster movies. The Terminator, one of the most BA dramatic concepts in science fiction, time travel, apocalypse horror movies, they turned into garbage. Because they had to have a Latina spunky girl now be the savior instead of the okay.
It's representation. Representation matters, or so they say.
Yes, I say that I would like everyone who's within the sound of my voice to rise up in rebellion and put money in my hat. Not because I want the money, because I do. I'm as greedy and as any science fiction writer. But there's also a crusade that should be going on to reclaim our culture and to take back science fiction, fantasy, space opera, you name it. Okay, it should all come back to us, and we don't want people just spitting on everything we think is nice. That's my sales pitch. Any questions?
That was really thorough and well thought out. You should consider.
I didn't even mention everyone I stole ideas from. My race of perfectly logical, Vulcan-like super intellects are called the Equine, and they're the Houyhnhnms from Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels. I decided I had to have space horses because the space race horses in Last Jedi offended me. It was such a stupid idea.
Well, I mean,
charging over the tops of spaceships. No, I decided to make my horses very logical. Oh, and who else did I steal? Thumb the Lion Man. Thumb the Lion Man's a character from Flash Gordon. I decided that instead of having the humans run everything like they seem to be doing in the Star Wars galaxy, I was going to have the lions running everything because they're big, they're impressive, they're cats, and everyone likes cats, and they'll rip you to pieces if you disagree with them. So that was my idea for that.
It's true.
Oh, Howard the Duck is in my book as a. There's one duck who's a senator, one who's a space pirate, one who is a psychic, a Templar knight called Cedric the Spooky. I borrowed from a lot of sources because all these things that I love, I wanted to put it in one place and polish it and make it shine for my readers.
I love that, and for what you're saying on the culture wars. How do I put this? Talking about the culture wars, right? As a pundit, or talking about it, or whinging about it, or complaining about it, does nothing. but actually producing useful, good culture. That's what we need. That's the sort of thing that actually will eventually perhaps bring us back from the brink, or at least give us a diversion from all the absolute nonsense that we deal with day in and day out.
These guys have a deliberate program. Their worldview is different from ours and antithetical to ours, and they know it, and it doesn't look like we do. Because they set out a systematic long march through our institutions and a systematic destruction of our dreams and hopes, because they know that politics is downstream from culture, but culture is downstream from cult. Culture is downstream from your worldview. Now, your worldview is informed mostly by your religion, but it's also buttressed by the stories you tell, including the popular stories, including the innocent stories, the children's stories. You see? If every children's story you read has all the white guys be the bad guy, and all the heroes be villains, and all the villains be heroes, I will cough in my sleeve and mention Riri Williams in passing, then you raise people who don't have anything in their imagination to fall back on when the revolution comes. And the revolution is coming. These people are planning on it. I don't mean to sound paranoid, but I've read history books. But I feel like I'm in a silo. Some of my circle of friends know I'm doing this project, and I get some publicity, but I don't know what to do to reach a wider audience. So I hope everyone who listens to Geek Gab will go out and immediately tell 10 people that there's a revolution coming, that we're going to return to the good old days when pulp magazines had women in breasts bras on the cover. That's what I'm going for here. And I like female characters who act female, and I like male characters who act female, and I like lion men characters who act like lion men. And obviously, I like horses. I like horses who act like Mr. Spock. I just said I did that, you know.
I think you might have our audience's number. Bradford Walker says dashing heroes, thrilling chases, dangerous villains, mortal perils, moral certainty, all wrapped up around fantastic adventures. That's what I want.
Well, God bless you, sir. God bless you.
Yeah.
I should mention that my opening scene is my main character getting her planet blown up when she's a wee little child. But that's the prelogue. That's the prologue. That's in the past. My main character is a cop who is in his space armor, crawling through the blast tube of a pirate ship, trying to cut his way through the atomic tube into the engineering section before they turn on the drive and burn him to death while not being detected. He's got to sneak into an airtight ship without losing any air. So there is that.
Brilliant.
Oh, I should mention one other thing, and this is not a spoiler because you find it right away. My main character, the policeman, also has a secret amulet. Excuse me. It might be robotic. It's a mask that clamps to his face and grows little probes through his flesh and bones into his brain and gives him increased strength, increased speed, enhances all his senses, and allows him to project energy claws from his knuckles like the Wolverine in X-Men. And it surrounds him with a force field that is shaped to look like the garment and the body of his ancestor, the first man ever killed by a pirate, whom some people call the Ancient Mariner. It has nothing to do with the poem, The Ancient Mariner. It's just a name I picked because I thought it sounded slightly spooky. Because the mask has been passed down through the generations of his bloodline to carry out the family oath against all pirates that his first ancestor made when he was killed by pirates. So the main character has a double life. Because he can't tell it. He's not supposed to use it. He's not supposed to have this piece of necromantic super technology. One other thing I did slightly different from Star Wars, I decided that I was going to take a page from Babylon 5, which had ancient and elder races in addition to the modern races. So there are things floating around in my galaxy, in the Andromeda galaxy, that is ancient artifacts that no one knows now how they're made. You see, and even my character's my character's father's lance pistols, a special type of energy pistol, that modern engineers can't make because the war wiped out so much technology because it was the Dark Ages. You see where I'm going with that?
Yep.
So I get all the flavor of ancient things, ancient magical swords and so on, but they're high tech. But they're so high tech they're indistinguishable from magic. In other words, and I did that just because I thought readers would like it. Oh, let me say one last thing about this. I took a mighty oath long ago that in my science fiction stories, I was never going to make up any astronomical wonders because the real wonders of real astronomy are so astonishing. So in my version of the Andromeda Galaxy, it's not a spiral. It's not a double spiral like the Milky Way is. It's got two rings, an inner ring and an outer ring surrounding a core. At the core, there's two supermassive black holes orbiting each other at high speed. The ring system was disturbed by an ancient collision with a satellite galaxy, causing a group of stars called the Warp in one part of the galaxy and causing a spray of stars called the Claw stars. I didn't make any of this up. That's the real Andromeda Galaxy I'm describing, okay? So I put it in a real setting and used the real Andromeda Galaxy for some of my setting. The only thing I did as a nod to my readers was I decided that after the Milky Way galaxy was dead, all the humans and their associated races had fled to Andromeda Galaxy long, long ago. To them, it's like the Noah's Ark story would be to us. Some people think Milky Way is a myth, so it's long gone. But I said the human colonists, when they first arrived, no matter what planet they stepped on, they named all the stars in the sky after their old constellations, even though none of them were the same shape of the stars. They just put the names up because they missed their old heavens, So all the planets and stars are named after familiar astronomical names. Like my main character is named Lyra, for example, and so on and so forth. So there's my sales pitch, and there's my
You've got
my urgent plea to your audience.
yeah. The audience is also going to steal all of your stuff, just like you stole it. So we're gonna spread it. Michael Nelson is scribbling notes so fast his pencil's on fire.
Feel free, because there is a deposit of science fiction lore from the old days that modern people the modern generation of readers don't seem to be aware of. That's why I'm harkening back to the pulps. There's a guy, the other Richard Palinowski is also writing in my background. If you want to set a story in my background, write me and I'll give you permission.
Yeah, it's an important thing.
I love that.
I mean, I want to make this large. I want to start my own Inklings or start my own H.P. Lovecraft circle. If I could get Robert E. Howard to write a Cthulhu Mythos story, I'd adore it. And I made up so much garbage. I made up so much brilliant content that will delight every reader of all ages. I made up so much stuff that there's way too much for me to explore the nooks and crannies. One thing I did not like about Star Wars in the movies, though the EU doesn't have this problem, is in the movies there's no sense of the past. So I said, okay, no, this is the 12th age. There were 12 additional 1,000-year periods where different races were the dominant race in different periods of time. The galaxy's always had one form of government, and I based it on the Roman Empire because why not? Rome is cool. But in each period of history, a different source, a different part of the government was predominant, and a different theory of how to govern was predominant. But only in the modern age are they trying the experiment of having a written charter, a written constitution, and a lot of the people who just escaped from the empire, because the empire has just been overthrown, don't know if they can trust this new form of government. How could they ask? How can you have a government with just a piece of paper running things? That doesn't make any sense. Why isn't there someone strong at the head of the republic to simply solve problems like we used to have? And the thing that's funny is, piracy is increasing because the empire is gone. You see, some of the law and order broke down during the war, so there's the Commonwealth has to play catch up, and they have to win over the loyalty of some planets who haven't decided whether they're going to trust this new system or not. Does that make sense? That's a whole angle that I didn't see in Star Wars, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair to Star Wars, it was like a Flash Gordon
Sure.
copy, and George Lucas just wanted to make his thing, and there's all sorts of these. There was no need for him to do all the thinking about cool stuff like, hey, what did the galaxy look like far in the future or far in the past or something like that.
Yeah, but that's what the EU was for. That's what the extended universe was for, and that's why Disney was foolish to jettison all that material. They made up a pretty healthy body of lore and legend for that.
And they even continued. I don't know if you've ever, if you're familiar with them, but they made a couple of role-playing games on the Xbox, Knights of the Old Republic, which
I don't play Xbox, but I did once try to get a job with West End Games, who did the original Star Wars role-playing game, and I mean pencil and paper tabletop game.
They messed up.
My Jedi character Don QOT, the Quixotic Jedi, didn't actually make it into this book though. Though if anyone of your listeners wants to write up Don QOT as the Quixotic Jedi, then you may. That was Quixotic Jedi was one of the character classes, one of the templates that West End Games had in their system. Because all the sane Jedi were dead, all the threatening Jedi were dead. If you wanted to play someone with Jedi powers in the West End game system, you had to be someone that Darth Vader would not bother going to kill. And so, if you played someone who hallucinated and thought there was a force, and he thought he was fighting windmills and giants and stuff, that was my idea for that character. So, excuse me, I shouldn't talk about old role-playing games. Nothing is more boring. That's why I have to put them in novels and stuff. But he didn't make it in. But yes, I've played both old Star Wars and new Star Wars role-playing games, and they do make up material. And in fact, there's a source book for Space Pirates in the latest game from I forget who's making it. My geek street cred will suffer terribly if I can't remember the name of the publisher here, but they did a good job with the material.
Well, I'm not familiar with that, but yeah, in addition to the extended universe, the Knights of the Old Republic games, they were set in the distant past of Star Wars, so that they could tell stories about ancient Jedi and Sith without interacting at all with any of the existing stories. Really cool stuff. Disney didn't even bother. Why bother?
And it was just there. It was low-hanging fruit. They could have just plucked it. Look, I have a trash can shaped like R2-D2. I love those stories. I would have been giving them money every time they made a film, as long as they just didn't insult me. You know, if they just made films that were okay, they didn't even have to be great. They didn't have to blow my socks off. If they were just solid adventure stories, okay, I would have been there with my cash in hand, and eager for more. But no, they had to try to make it as unlike Star Wars as they possibly could. They had to turn the good guys into the bad guys. They had to turn the women into men. They had to make the Jedi guy not have Jedi powers. And I'm talking about the defector there, the stormtrooper.
The stormtrooper, yeah.
That's such a good character. He could have been somebody.
The obvious guy to give newfound force powers to.
What a waste. I mean, they had so much potential. Well, anyway, I can't complain. That's why I wrote this book.
Yeah.
I wanted to show the world what you could do if you ramped up the potential and then you cranked it up to 11, which I do. I just got done writing a chapter called War of Suns and Moons, where artificial suns and spin-dizzy engine loose moons are hurling at each other through the Doc E. Smith style warfare of deep space. I hope James Blish won't mind if I borrowed a term from him. Spin-dizzy is a term from James Blish's stories. It refers to a gravity engine, a super gravity engine that operates. The larger the mass is that you're moving through space, the more efficient it is. So it's actually no use putting it on a ship. You have to put it on a moon or an asteroid to get some real effect.
Wow.
Because when I have an evil space base show up, I want people to say, that's no space station, that's a moon.
and it really is.
Yeah. I have the war moons are covered with 400 fortresses that have continental-sized force screens and trinary and binary weapons that shoot out coherent beams of stripped particles or antimatter. I tried to keep my weapons somewhat realistic, but it's a little bit of just jargon. When I say somewhat realistic, I mean vaguely based on a smell of something that could have been realistic if I thought about it. So No, I'm slightly kidding. I do actually have things like mass drivers and particle beam weapons that operate realistically. I do have 2 scenes that take place in
All right.
warp.
It looks like we're moving on towards closing time.
In that case, I won't tell you about what I was going to say.
Do you have any other last questions, Sean?
Oh, I'm out of questions. Thanks so much for hanging out and sharing the stuff with us. And I hope that everybody listening goes and checks that out because you're doing good work.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, gentlemen, for having me. I've been honored to be your guest.
And we already heard the pitch, so Daddy Warpig. Can he hear us?
I don't know. He's supposed to wrap us up and escort us off the premises.
Yeah, I wonder. I'm gonna have to do it. I'm gonna have to do it.
You're gonna have to do it. You're gonna have to do it. He's off.
I suspected that he couldn't hear you any longer, so he thought we were done. He thought there was some dead air. Yeah. Please go buy John's books. It's been awesome. Yeah. So yeah, while Daddy Warpig jumps back in, looks like he's almost here. Any last thoughts?
From me?
Yeah.
I just wonder where Daddy Warpig went. I could have named a character Daddy Warpig, and I didn't. I do have a guy called Dietrich the Mad. I did let some people, if they're willing to donate a small pittance, they could name a character for me. And Dietrich the Mad is one of the characters that I made a major character. That someone bought the name off me. I just thought that was cute. He's a pirate.
Love it. Well, of course he is.
And he's a Servine. He's a horned man. He's got deer antlers growing out of his head, which is rough on space helmets. Let me tell you.
Yeah, I had technical problems. Surprisingly enough.
It's just another day at the office.
Yep. Well, if we were the Empire, you could just shoot the technician, and then it would get solved. I'm kidding. You space the technicians. You don't shoot the technicians.
Yeah, you force choke the officers.
If you space the technicians, you don't need to clean up the body. So, Daddy, time to say goodbye. So you have to give us the outro and escort us off the property.
Oh, I didn't know we were at that point.
Yep. An hour.
I was holding out, waiting for people to finish stuff. All right, folks, this has been Geek Gab for Monday, July 7th, 2025. I want to thank John C. Wright coming on and encourage everyone to go check out his book series. And it is an amazing good deal if you want to catch up on the already published books, the 4 books that are out right now. And to get in on the books that are coming out, go check out the Kickstarter and help boost it towards the next few goals. And I want to thank, of course, my fellow host, Darnall. We, let's see, Geek Gab is here on youtube.com/Geek Gab. Once again, that's youtube.com/Geek Gab. You can get us on the Google Play Store, the iTunes Store, and on SoundCloud.com. Subscribe to us on the device of your choice. Download us to your computer or listen to us on the web because we are available in all those places for you. We are here just about every Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, live, so you can jump in the chat and interact with the awesome people who are there, and I am not even kidding. We've got great people who come in the chat, so you can come in and join too. But don't forget, we also have the show available all those other places if you can't join us live, if you want to listen later. Folks, we are signing out for today, but don't you worry, don't you fret. We will be back.